Hello, Criona. Thank you so much for coming for the first PrevTalk, which this is a first season for us, and we are very happy to have you on board. And today we're going to discuss a major topic related to return to office, ergonomic risks, and everything related to what you've been doing in Capella. But first of all, I would like you to, present yourself a little bit. I know you have a very interesting path in your career and now as an entrepreneur. And so it will be wonderful for our listeners to really get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. Listen, it's lovely to be here, Liliana, and thank you so much for inviting me. And I know we've been doing some work together, really enjoy working with Bound Health. So it's a double pleasure to be here today. So at Capella, we're really experts in hybrid working. We came from a background of employee engagement and workplace design and all of the kind of the pain points that went along with that. And then over the last couple of years, we've really poured a lot of kind of resource and I suppose our expertise into technology solutions to support companies, firstly with remote working. And then we followed on with technical supports or software for hybrid working. So really we're working with clients right across Europe, and we have an office in the US as well, and really getting underneath the pain points of hybrid working and supporting both employees and employers with practical tools around managing hybrid working. So for employees, it's everything from hot desking to collaboration to health and safety, both at home and in the office. And then for employers, it's getting into the deep data around the trends that their organization have for hybrid working and how they can take the data and make it insights for tomorrow's hybrid working policies.
Great. And one of the first issues, and we started our collaboration with the perspective on ergonomic risks in remote working. In your perception, as of now, whether you work remotely, hybrid, what are the major ergonomic risks that you find people are facing in their work setting, in the way that we are working and collaborating now?
So hybrid working hasn't changed the law around health and safety, but it has changed the context. So there are things, so to just very quickly start with the office, if you have 20% of staff in and somebody has a heart attack, how do you know that one of the people that are in that day is trained in first aid and knows how to intervene and handle it? So these kind of things are the considerations that you wouldn't necessarily think of in a hybrid scenario, but the law is still the same, and the law hasn't caught up with the current situation. And that was very much something that I was on a webinar yesterday with an employment lawyer who was explaining this, and it's kind of frightening, but it's not too hard to put steps in place to deal with this. The other thing is an evacuation list. Again, if you have 20% of staff in the building and you need to evacuate, how do you know that everyone is out unless you have recorded who was there and ideally where they were sitting? Because if you're using hot desking, it could be anywhere. So that kind of is the office side of things. When you're looking at working from home, and this is really important, it's the employer's responsibility to look after employees who are working from home in the same way as if they were in the office. So if someone turned up for work on the first day and they were given their swag, their new t-shirt, their pen, and they were brought through the office and pointed to a cupboard under the stairs where they were going to have to work for 8 hours a day, or they were given a beanbag in the corner, or a kitchen chair, or to sit on a stool all day at a desk that was too low. That scenario is ridiculous. It just wouldn't happen. It's against the law. But that was the reality for people who were working from home. That's where they landed. They landed at the kitchen table. People who were advanced in their career had a nice office, had a little bit of space at home. Younger people or people from different socioeconomic backgrounds had different scenarios. And, you might have someone house sharing where one person gets the kitchen table and the other person gets the bedroom. And we saw an awful lot of that in the early days. And while it was kind of not acceptable, but understandable in the early days of sudden remote working, that was temporary. That was a temporary situation. we're now heading into what is a permanent hybrid working or remote working situation. And it's not acceptable not to deal with that at this stage. So you won't get away as an organization with saying, oh, you know, it was temporary or we were going to get to it. It's not good enough. Now at this point, employers have to carry out a risk assessment of employees' workspaces at home under European law right across Europe. And it's very important that they do that. So that's where companies like us come in and like Bound Health to support employees who are working from home and to make it easy, to make it not this huge onerous task that some poor HR person is going to just have thrown on their desk. And I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, completely. And also, you know, just considering, you know, in the Portuguese context, we had a, you know, recently the legislation following the European law, of course, was implemented, but the responsibility, it's not yet completely acknowledged by companies that they are responsible for the workspaces that people use, whether at home, whether in a co-working space, whether they work entirely remotely, like 100% remotely, or even in hybrid, which is the most common now. It's the hybrid in Portugal still. So some changes, some companies are, you know, getting back to the office, but most of them are not getting back into the office 100%. But do you feel that companies are already acknowledging, for instance, in other markets, in Europe, in Ireland, for instance, do you think that they are already understanding that they will need to have a risk assessment and to really understand what are the conditions that people are working when they are not at the office in terms of health and safety, ergonomic risks, and preventing MSK disorders, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think what seems to move organizations on, if they haven't already implemented this, is the fact that court cases are coming from employees who are injured at home. There was one in Germany last year where an employee tripped and fell between the bed and the desk, and it was considered a workplace accident, and it was awarded money, and it was upheld. We can see here that cases are coming through as well, very similar cases. And I think so there's two kind of reasons why someone would take a case. Number one, they were injured and it was an injury, and they do have a good case, and they do have a right to take that case. But the other is that, you know, as things get a little bit more difficult, nobody tends to take a case while the relationship with the company is great and their salary is great. But as things get a little bit more difficult and this mysterious recession that may or may not hit Europe starts to bite, you know, that's when employees start hearing about the cases and you know, think about something that happened to them, think about their neck and shoulder pain, and it's usually attached to some other problem that they're taking the employer to court over. But it sits very nicely in with that. And I think you know, the kind of stuff we're seeing is neck and shoulder pain for sure, back pain. And the reason that the case is kind of upheld in court is that the employer didn't carry out any ergonomic training, didn't assess the home, didn't give any advice. They left people to just set themselves up. And we all know that, you know, you can be a real expert in one area, but not in another area. And there's an awful lot of people out there who just don't know how to get themselves set up right when it comes to working from home. When they go into the office, it's done for them. When they go home, they sit at the kitchen table for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And they don't realize that bending your head and the weight of your skull as you bend puts pressure on your spine, your neck, your shoulders. And they do have a problem. Whereas if employers can just get ahead of that with ergonomic training, with a risk assessment, with a follow-up, and have a process to do that, the problem is taken care of. So we have two kind of clients, I suppose, in terms of reasons why this is done. And our clients are right across, you know, big law firms and insurance firms, right to design agencies, small design agencies. And some employers are doing this because they feel it's the right thing to do. They want their employees to be set up right. There are all sorts of benefits to that. Employees see it as a perk. And other firms are doing it from a compliance point of view, literally to tick the box. The training we give is time-stamped. So if there's an issue in the future, you have a file with a full risk assessment to hand to the insurance company. So there's kind of two reasons why you do this. And depending on the culture of your company, it doesn't matter. Both give the same result to the employee and are a good thing to do. But different companies do it for different reasons.
From your sorry. From your experience, also the impacts, and you know, at Bound, we are very concerned with well-being and mental health, and also other indicators of health and other risks factors. But from your experience, when you work on, you know, the ergonomic risk work from home assessments, and even with your hybrid work platform, what are you getting in terms of insights of the impact of this new way of working on productivity, on well-being, on even safety hazards or things related to health and safety? Do you have already some experience with the clients that you are already working in, how this is impacting, how people actually, you know, the outcomes are translating in terms of health and productivity? Do you have some insights?
Yeah, so some organizations handle the productivity side very well. You know, they work on a billable hour basis. So any drop in productivity would be dealt with straight away. So they've been very proactive in that. Training is a big part of making sure that people have everything they need to be productive, and then keeping an eye on KPIs works very well. In terms of the impact of hybrid working and remote working and the current situation, I suppose to bring it down to a personal level, I always kind of thought when I had children first, and when I was running an hour on the main motorway in Dublin to work and an hour back, always running, I kind of dreamed of this idyllic working from home or hybrid working scenario where I was 2 stone lighter, and I had this perfect balance. And it just didn't happen. It didn't happen for all of us. We had this, I suppose we had this period in the initial stages of COVID where everything was locked down and we were going for lunchtime walks, and then suddenly the working days started to creep into longer hours and every aspect of life. And suddenly the children were walking themselves to school, and, you know, I was working first thing in the morning. And I think there's been huge creep into life. So the work-life balance has been a big problem. We don't kind of specialize in the area that you specialize in, which makes us very complementary. And we're very much looking at the physicality of hybrid working. Our platform kind of measures occupancy and gives trends on how the workspace can be used for employers. But one area we're getting into now, which is really interesting, and we're beta testing and we're doing pilots on this, is the link between hybrid working and DEI. So equality, inclusion, and what we're working on is whether there's a link between time spent in the office and career progression, as opposed to someone who's working from home. And if there isn't a link, does the person working from home feel like they're being excluded and they don't have the same opportunities, which is hugely stressful? And do you have a whole cohort of people? You've built this culture of inclusion. Do you have a whole cohort of people who are now working from home, who you had put a lot of time and effort to bringing into the workplace before? So there's a lot of links around that sort of thing. And what we find is that human nature being human nature, we want stability, we want planning, and where there are policies that are kind of just left to yourself to come in, not come in, and there's no structure around that, there's a lot of stress being created for employees around that. So our systems and our kind of our culture suggests that people plan ahead in a professional way around hybrid working, that a formal policy is put in place. There's nothing wrong with saying, look, it is an iterative process. This could change, so we're going to give it 6 months and communicate that. And then there's nothing wrong with changing it or tweaking it if the communication is there. But certainly, as human beings, we crave structure when it comes to this kind of thing.
What's your perception to drive a little bit return to the office, to drive people back to the office? What kind of experience or insights did you get also from the clients you work on? How can companies actually motivate people to return to the office in a sustainable way, in a way? And as you were saying, because of course it improves collaboration, it helps with of course inclusion, diversity, and it impacts the innovation of a company also. So how do you work with the companies and what insights to return to the office to build this excitement?
Yeah, so it's a huge issue for all sizes of companies. I suppose the first thing is that you're not going to go back to 2018, 2019, where everyone's in the office. It's just not going to happen. We say no one's putting the genie back in the bottle on that one. Hybrid working is here to stay. People have stopped asking me that question. So it's kind of, I know with the clients that it's kind of accepted. But you have companies who have offices, large offices in the center of a city or small offices. It doesn't really matter. They've invested in real estate, and there's often pressure from senior management to fill that real estate and to get people back in. So getting people back in full time or trying to is very challenging, and it causes more problems than it fixes in what we can see. And you get the silent resignations, you get people who are looking for flexibility. But what we can also see in the survey of working attitudes in the States, and it's carrying through to Europe, is that there is a kind of a coming together on what employers are planning for and what employees are willing to live with. So initially employees didn't want to come back at all, and employers wanted them back full time. Now we're at employers planning for 2.5 days, 2.4 days to be exact. And employees are saying, okay, we'll do 1.5 days. So we're coming very close to having something that's very workable. And I think once that's accepted, and it's accepted that it won't be full-time return to the office, there are ways to nudge that number up the extra day. So what we do in our platform is that we give employees a kind of a window into the office while they're sitting at home. And we create a peripheral connection between employees who are sitting at home and the office. So we always draw up the floor plans of the office, the actual office. It's not like booking an airline seat where you're clicking a green chair. You actually see a floor plan of your office. You can see pictures of your colleagues' faces in the seats. And you get a sense of, okay, I'm sitting at home, but there is life outside this kitchen, and you get that peripheral connection. And what you find is that human nature being human nature, once people see who's in, you also want to kind of get in there, if you like, on certain days. And then another really important point is that return to the office has to be a positive experience. No one wants to go in the car for an hour, arrive in the office, sit in an empty office where none of their colleagues and friends are. There's no opportunity to connect, and then drive, do Zoom call after Zoom call and then drive home. So another thing that we worked on was to make sure that people knew what to expect when they were coming in, picked a place where there were colleagues that they could collaborate with or they could be creative with. And I think at the end of the day, as adults, we tend to make friends at work. We're not four. It's not that easy to walk up to a stranger and say, will you be my friend? That is where we get our social connection. So we find that when people go into the office and have a positive experience, it lifts them when they're back at home, and it tends to push them towards wanting to go back again the next week if the policy is that loose that they can set it themselves. So a bottom-up policy. And we're seeing it across, like we have a dashboard of all the numbers in our office, and we can see it nudging up. And it's nudging up because we're human beings and we're looking for human moments and human connections. And then the other thing that's quite interesting from our point of view is that we're starting to onboard third-party hubs onto the system as well. So where you have a company who has employed people from the other side of the country during the last couple of years, if they were good enough to employ over the last couple of years and they performed well, and now you're at the point where you want people to start coming back into the office a little bit, they should be good enough to still be a part of that whole scenario. So what some of our clients are doing is providing third-party locations, third-party hubs for these guys to go to when they want that social connection, when they want a bit of collaboration, a bit of focused work, whatever it is that works for them. We now have the main office as the hub and the homes as the spokes, and then a few dotted satellites, I suppose, which are third-party hubs. And it's working very well for the organizations who are doing it. But the key is they're trying it. They're gathering the data, and then they're making data-driven decisions on what's working. And they can tweak it and they can go again. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, you mentioned this, and I think data and insights from data, that it's around utilization, it's around perception, it's around, yeah. Do you find that, human resources management, even the top management, they are now open to anchor the decisions on data and use this data that you are providing? Because we have a sense sometimes in the market that people tend to, use their own personal insights, what's best for the people that work for me or that work in this company. And sometimes it's challenging to really show some results. And then, of course, it's not just data driven, it's also they have to reason about data. Do you find that they are more open to these insights that you are able to provide concerning whether the ones that are working from home, concerning the ones that are working in the main office, and then also looking at the other satellites office that they could have of the company for people to work in a co-working shared space?
It's a really interesting question. I think it's an age-old challenge. Data is only as good as what you do with it. And there are a lot of reports that were given to me over the years that are sitting in a cupboard somewhere, and I did nothing with them. And so again, I'm the first to admit that I'm human in this sense. But I know a lot of companies now are at the point, and a lot of HR leadership are at the point where they haven't gathered the data. They were going on gut. They didn't even know where to start, to be honest with you. Where do you even start to gather data? And now they're under pressure, and they're being asked to make decisions, and they're being asked to commit to large budgets within operations, within, you'll get the CEO sweeping in saying this needs to be a hybrid office, I want people back, approving a budget, and you literally don't know why people are coming in, who's coming in, what do people want, so I think now we're certainly seeing an uplift in organizations using our platform. One of the things we're seeing is that some organizations are using the platform to determine whether they actually need all the office space they have. Is there a sixth floor that they can sublet and help with the rent? And I think there was an expectation. So when everyone landed at their kitchen table, it was as it was. There's an expectation on HR leaders, operations, facilities, to make this return to the office, this hybrid scenario, perfect and flawless right out of the gate, straight away. And what we're saying is it's iterative. Get the data, use the data, understand how it's working, and go from there. But certainly some organizations won't have an appetite for some of the stuff we're seeing around the DEI piece, because it's very challenging. And that barking dog, which is the practical stuff about organizing people coming back to the office, making sure they're working in a safe environment. That dog takes all the attention, but actually it's the quiet dog in the corner that sometimes bites harder. And that could be in 6 months, it could be a year, or it could be 2 years. But we really are working with clients now to get ahead of those kind of problems.
It's great to hear that you also find challenges with your data and the type of insights that they could use to make hybrid work. Actually, that's what we're working on also inbound, particularly related to behaviors and perceptions and how people are actually handling the stress and the challenge of working this way. So normally we end our talks with the question: it's a more personal question, but it's also related to our main topic, which is about work. And the question is, how do you see yourself, Criona, working in 2030? How do you see yourself? You could describe what you will be doing, where you will be working, how Capella will be thriving. How will you be working in 2030?
That's an interesting question, and thank you for not giving me any warning. So I'll have to tell the truth here. So in 2030, I would see myself, we're a young enough company still, so I'm involved in all sorts of areas of the company. I would see myself more focused on developing a new team coming up, on networking. I'm quite passionate about paying it back. So the younger generation, especially young women, showing them how there is a path into technology and entrepreneurship. So I'd like to see myself doing more of that. And yeah, I mean, we'll just see what the future holds. I don't know, but certainly I'll still be working hybrid.
Yes, and also I think it will be hopeful for you. So I think you will move into other areas of collaboration, of adding value, and for sure we will be watching you and your company and all the other activities thriving. Thank you so much, Criona, to join us on this first season of our PrevTalks. It's impressive the amount of knowledge and experience that you already have on, due to everything that you do at Capella, and we've been watching also as partners how fast you have been moving and learning and iterating with your clients, and this is amazing. And I think it's a wonderful area of to work on, and the challenges are already here, and we will face others in the future. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience, and until next time. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.